Hi everybody, happy Wednesday. In today's video, I'm demonstrating a look that I often do for bridesmaids. I wanted to put some focus on the bridesmaids this week because they're a big part of the wedding, and it's important that you choose the right makeup to make sure you execute the bride's vision for the wedding day. The look that I'm showing you today actually is a shadow look that is going to be using warm browns and some pink. I'm bringing a little bit of color into the makeup application. The reason I wanted to do this look for you is because I've been working with a lot of bridesmaids recently who are wearing very muted tones. So a lot of off-white, champagne, beige, taupe, really light pinks. And oftentimes when you have bridesmaids that are wearing these dresses, it's nice to bring just a hint of color onto the skin, brightens up everyone's face. Sometimes those colors can be hard to wear, so it's nice to add some color onto the skin, so you'll be able to see how I do that. And in addition to this video, I also have a new post up on my blog about things to consider when you're working with the bridal party, how to make sure that their makeup looks beautiful but doesn't overshadow the bride, what to think about when you're choosing a look for your bridal parties. So there will be a lot of extra information in that blog post, and you can check it out after you watch this video. Riley is our model for this week. This is her before photo. You may remember her from a few weeks back. Riley has really beautiful skin, so there's really not a complex skin prep with her. She requires a little bit of hydration under the eye area, but other than that, her skin is pretty flawless. The only difference in Riley's skin this time around is that she does have more of a tan. If you notice her shoulders and chest area, they are quite tan. Her neck's a little bit lighter and her face is still fair, so I'm going to have to remember to bring in more of that warmth when I'm applying her foundation to ensure that everything is well blended and her face doesn't end up looking a lot lighter than the rest of her body. Especially when you're working with personal clients for weddings or events, you have to think about the type of dress they're going to be wearing. So whether it's a halter or a sleeveless or something where the shoulders and chest are showing, everything needs to work well and blend well so that it looks uniform in photos. Another thing you might remember about Riley are her brows. So they're really beautiful brows, they're very full, and they are darker in color, so I need to be cautious when I'm filling the brows in. Dark brows like this can be very easy to overfill, and it's kind of a hard thing to undo, and you don't want to have to deal with this when you are doing makeup for a wedding. I mentioned in the intro that I'm going to be bringing some color into this makeup application on the eyes, cheeks, and lips. I'm using a warm pinky rose color for this. I want to make sure that this look doesn't turn into a pink eyeshadow look, and I don't want the color to take over the makeup. Positioning and placement of color is very important here. With Riley's eyes, I'm going to be focusing this pink color on the outer corner and just above the eyelid, so this color is just going to be peeking out from behind the lashes and peeking out from behind the warmer brown shadow that I'm going to be using along the lash line. Something that you know about me already and my makeup style is that I like well blended eyeshadow looks, well blended makeup looks. Regardless of what color I'm using, I like to make sure that it shows up true to color on the eyelid, which is why I use a primer and will put a little bit of foundation on the eyelid, and why I use certain brands of shadows. I like to layer shadows, so I need to work with shadows that don't get muddy when I do any layering. And I also like to make sure that the deepest color that I use is blended well into and stays close to the lash line. I don't like to see any skipping of the shadow along the lash line, so I spend a lot of time making sure everything is well blended and working a lot of color into that upper lash line. I also think that keeping a nice soft deep color at the lash line helps to bring in a false lash if you are using one with your makeup application. Speaking of lashes, I'll be using a lash from the Velour Effortless collection. The reason I'm choosing one from the Effortless collection is because they are more natural. The actual lash itself does not need to be trimmed. It's shorter in style, so it fits very nicely on the eyelid. It's very comfortable for your clients to wear. The lashes themselves are not too long, not too thick, and not heavy at all, so very comfortable and a really nice complement to a softer style. I want the shadow to show through. I don't want the lashes to block the shadow. I want the eyes to be open. I want you to be able to see the brows and that little bit of pink color that I'm bringing into the eye makeup, so I don't want a heavy lash that takes over the entire makeup. Moving on to skin prep, Riley's skin was well moisturized before we started, so I won't be putting on any moisturizer. I'll just be going along the under eye with some Bioderma Sensibio Eye Gel. It can be a long day for your bridal client, so I like to start with a good lip moisturizer right at the beginning of my makeup application. This just makes sure that the lipstick looks really beautiful on for the rest of the day. Starting with foundation, I like to move from the top of the head downward, so I'll start with the forehead and then move on to the eyes. I find this is great for speed, so you don't have to worry about any fallout ruining the makeup on the face. I'm using the same foundation as last time. The Face Atelier is too yellow for Riley, who's more of a neutral pink undertone, so I'm using the RCMA foundation, which is more pink undertone, to neutralize some of that yellow. Riley's forehead did get a bit of a tan right along the hairline, so I'm just making sure to blend that into the rest of the foundation. I'm using RCMA foundation in Shinto 2. It's not quite as yellow as the Face Atelier, but it's yellow enough to bring some of the warmth of the tan onto the skin, so everything's well blended. Prepping the eyelids, I'm using MAC Prep+Prime. It's the 24-hour Extend Eye Base, my favorite eye primer. I use this all the time. It really helps me apply the shadow smoothly. It holds the color for the entire day, so I am applying this all over the lids from the lash line up into the brows. Because Riley has thicker brows, I like to prep the brows with something like the Anastasia brow primer. Gives me some control and hold and creates a smooth base for the brow powder duo. And of course, with the waxy brow primer, you need to brush it in so anything you put on after goes on smoothly. I'm filling in the brows with the Anastasia brow powder duo in Granite on an angled brush. Granite looks like a dark color, but it's actually very close in color to her natural brow color. I'm going very slowly and just filling in where I need it. I'll step back, fill a little bit in, brush it out, just to make sure I don't go overboard with the brows. With the darker brows, this can happen so quickly. It's happened to me many times, and I'm sure it's happened to you as well, where you think you're just filling in the brows naturally and it ends up being this like really huge dark brow. So you definitely want to avoid that. And you want to create a nice, soft, natural looking brow that doesn't take over the entire face. When I'm working with bridesmaids, sometimes the looks are simpler, softer, they're not as dramatic as the look that I'm doing on the bride. So I like to pay attention to little details like the brows. I like to make sure the brows look perfect. It just adds a nice finish and can elevate the makeup. In this case with Riley, I'm using Cinema Secrets on an angle brush to just clean up and shape the brows. Nothing too dramatic, very subtle, but it's a nice touch, and you'll see how beautiful this looks once the makeup's done. I'm starting to build this eyeshadow look now. I'm actually using a base shadow for this makeup application. Normally I would just go to Studio Fix, but this shadow has a little bit of warmth to it. It's very similar to her actual skin color, so it makes a nice base shadow, and it will help with the application of the other shadows that I put on top. Now I'm taking highlighter. I'm using one of the shades from the MAC Hyper Real Glow palette. I'm working this under the brow, and I'm going to drag this highlighter onto the eyelid. The reason I'm doing this now is to just create some dimension with the eyeshadows. I don't want to do this on top because it's going to change the look. I just want some highlight to peek through the eyelid and the shadows that I'm going to put on top. When you're doing looks like this, it's important to not go in with a shadow that's very dark right away. You want to gradually darken the shadows when you're doing these softer romantic looks. I'm going in with a shadow that's taupe in color. You can use a light brown, anything that's softer and 1 or 2 shades darker than your client's eyelid. This is how you achieve those really soft blended looks. I'm using a MAC 217 brush and MAC blush in Desert Rose to bring some color onto the eyelid, and you can see that I'm focusing the application of this color on the outer corner of the eye, and I'm lightly blending it in so it just sits above the eyelid. I like to use blush for this because usually most blush colors have a really soft, natural tone to them, so it works great on the eyes as well. And as we get through this makeup application, you'll see I'll use the same blush on the cheeks so the whole look is cohesive. I'm using now a medium toned warm brown from the MAC Semi Sweet x9 palette. I'm using the MAC 239 brush, which is a more dense brush, so it packs on more color. And I'm working this medium brown color right into the lash line. As I mentioned, I like to gradually increase the darkness of the shadow that I'm using, and I keep the darkest shadows closest to the lash line, so that's what I'm doing here. Removing the excess with Bioderma Micellar Water. I'm not removing all of it because I do want to keep some of the shadow on that lower lash line. This is the darkest shadow I will be using in this look. It's a dark warm brown from the Marc Jacobs Glambition eyeshadow palette. I'm using this on a pencil brush. This is going right into the lash line. I'm basically using it in place of a liner. Now that the majority of the eyeshadow is done, I'm going to move on to the rest of the foundation. I'm keeping it pretty simple here. I'm just using the combination of foundations that I started with, so Face Atelier and RCMA, buffing it into the skin with a synthetic brush. At the beginning of the video, you saw me blend in some of that Shinto 2 along the hairline. I'm leaving it there. I kind of tapered it off just on either side of the face. I'm going to be bringing in some dimension using a powder product, so I won't be using the Shinto 2 on the cheeks. Since we're doing doing a really light and fresh look, I try to keep my layering of cream products to a minimum, especially for bridal clients. So for now, just the foundation, and then dimension will be added with a powder product. There is really nothing to conceal under Riley's eyes, but I do want to brighten them up and blend in the under eye area with the rest of the foundation. I'm choosing Cinema Secrets. It's waterproof, great for bridesmaids and bridal clients. I'm using a light peach corrector with a bit of the pink undertone foundation. That's time to set the makeup. I'm using Laura Mercier translucent setting powder. I'm being very cautious about how much powder I use. Riley's skin is dry and dehydrated, so I don't want to over powder her skin and leave her with a very dry looking makeup. A little goes a long way in this case. I'm gonna do a light spray of Urban Decay De-Slick down the center of the face before I move on. As I mentioned, for my bridal clients, I don't like to layer a ton of cream products on the skin, especially for those who are getting married in the warmer months or in warmer climates. So I go in with the Makeup Forever Artist Face Color. It works well on dry skin because it is such a finely milled product, so that's what I'm doing here. Just bringing some dimension and definition to the cheeks and around the face. I think you've seen me use this product a couple times already, or maybe I've mentioned it on Instagram. MAC Mineralized Powder in dark. I love to use this as a bronzer on fair skin. Another reason that I like to use the mineralized powder is that it does not have a matte finish. It has a more satin finish, so it looks really beautiful on skin that is dry or dehydrated. To ensure that everything is blended, I take a brush with some MAC Mineralized Powder in medium, which is closer to her natural skin tone, and I will use just a tiny bit of this to blend in that dark mineralized powder with the rest of the foundation and the sculpting powder from Makeup Forever. Using waterproof mascara from L'Oreal, you'll see me do this technique where I lift the eyelid and have my clients keep their eyes open and look down. This allows you to get right up close to the eye so you can get the mascara right down to the base of the lashes. And bending the mascara wand will also help you get right to the base of the lashes. Another trick that I have, especially since we're going to be using a false lash, is to take a fan brush with some of the mascara on it and press the mascara right down to the base of the lashes. This fills in any gaps and it makes it so that when I pop the lash on, it looks seamless against the lash line. I'm taking that same blush in Desert Rose and I'm applying it on Riley's cheeks. Now Desert Rose on its own might be a bit dull and just slightly dark for Riley's skin, so I'm brightening it up by adding and mixing it with that MAC Extra Dimension blush. I'm sure you guys can tell I'm in love with this palette from MAC. It's the Hyper Real Glow palette, using the same highlighter that I use under the brow and on the eyes, just on the tops of the cheek, just to bring some light and some highlight onto the skin. I'm using Got To Be Spiking Glue as a brow gel. This is one of my favorite products for your kit for bridal, and it also works as an excellent brow gel for your clients that have thicker brows. Getting back to those little details that are so important and that really enhance and elevate your makeup application. Once the eye makeup is done, I like to take a small brush and just enhance some of the highlights on the eyes and face. Sometimes I'll do this with a damp brush and just press in some of that highlighter under the brow, on the inner corner, and above the cupid's bow. Making sure she doesn't get shiny, so a tiny bit of blot powder between the brows and around the nose. I'm just using a traditional lipstick for this makeup application, and this is what I use for most of my bridal clients unless they ask me to use something that's longer wearing. So I use a lip primer. This is the Sephora lip primer. It just prevents bleeding, it holds on to the color, and gives you a nice base for your lipstick application. My favorite part, putting the lashes on, I'm using velour lashes in Would I Lie from the Effortless collection. As I mentioned, the Effortless collection is so easy to use. You don't have to trim the lash, so it's a huge time saver. You can take it right out of the package and pop it onto the lash line. I'm using the white latex-free glue here, so I like to let this glue get tacky for about a minute before I glue the lashes onto the lash line. I usually like to wait until the lash is on to decide if I'm going to use eyeshadow on the lower lash line. In this case, I think it's going to be a really nice touch to this look. So I'm taking that soft taupe shadow so it's not too dark and just applying that on the lower lash line. And of course, keeping an eye on the lashes as they're drying to make sure they are in the right place and the ends are glued down properly. Let's try a pinky rosy kind of colored lipstick. I usually love to use a rose lipstick with this type of look, especially with bridesmaids who are wearing dresses that are more neutral in tone. So I'm using Almond Rose from Maybelline, which is a beautiful color, and then I'm bumping up the pink with a color from Makeup Forever. I love using a brown black mascara for the lower lash line. This is Maybelline Great Lash, of course, waterproof as well. And then just a little glue stuck to the outer corner, so we're getting rid of that with a tiny Q-tip and some Bioderma micellar water. As you know, I like my lash lines to look nice and dark. I don't want any gaps in shadow. I don't want a gap between the false lashes and the natural lashes. So I take this black shadow on an angle brush and I basically take the shadow and press it right into that area where the false lash meets the real lash. This also helps with mattifying some of the glue that is dried. Sometimes the latex-free clear glues can be a bit reflective and I don't want this to show up in pictures. Now that the makeup's all done, I took a look at the lipstick and I was not really feeling it. I definitely want the lipstick to be more rose and not as pink. So I'm using a shade from Maybelline called Romantic Rose, which I love for bridal. It's one of my favorite lipsticks. I use it all the time as much as I can. I'm going to apply this over the lipstick that I already applied just to neutralize some of that pink. Of course, we have to make sure that those lashes are where they are supposed to be, so you can make any adjustments that you need to for your clients so they're comfortable, and making sure that both ends of the lash are tacked down, and then finish the makeup with a setting spray. And here is our final look. Let's take a look at Riley's before and after. So I'm a big fan of this makeup application. I think it's soft and pretty, and I think it's perfect for a bridesmaid who is wearing a dress that is very muted in color. It's a great look for summer. It will wear well in warmer climates. It's great for those clients who are getting married very early in the morning. It's fresh, it's pretty, it's not overpowering. The rose color that I brought into the makeup, it doesn't really transform this look into a pink shadow look. It's just a pop of color on the outer corner, a pop of color on the cheeks and on the lips, but it's not overkill. Another great part of this makeup application are the lashes, and this is something I talk about in my blog post as well. Your choice for lashes is really important, especially when you're doing bridal. When you're in a rush, the right lash can save you some time because you don't need a lot of eye makeup with a good lash. In this case, the lash is not too long, it's not too crazy, it's not competing with the rest of the makeup look, it's not taking over the face. We can still see her eyelid. We can see that the lashes are just adding natural volume, some definition. They're not making the eyes look heavy. The lash is not hitting the brow. Overall, I think this look is extremely versatile. You can do this on any skin tone. It's great for bridesmaids and brides as well. You can do this with cool tones, warm tones. You can bring in bronze. You can even bring in peach depending on the skin tone. And this is why I wanted to demonstrate this look for you. Thank you so much for watching. And if you have any more questions about this look, you can put them in the comments. And of course, I'll see you back here next Wednesday. Bye everyone.